Welcome to Mel Bay's Anyone Can Play Bluegrass Banjo. This video course is designed for the beginning banjo student with no previous experience in music or with the banjo. All that we ask is that you follow the instructional material presented here slowly and carefully. There are 11 lessons on this tape. Do not advance to the next lesson until you have mastered the material in the previous lesson. Rewind the tape and watch the lesson as many times as you need to master the material. The music book enclosed with this tape contains all the music for all the lessons. Use the book along with the tape. First, in holding the banjo, you want the neck to come up in the air like this, and you want to make sure that you're not supporting the banjo with your left hand, because it's very difficult to hold the neck up and fret it at the same time. So a strap like I have on here will help it stay up by itself, or sometimes you can hold it so it'll stay up by itself, but don't hold the neck with your hand. Okay, next, on how to wear the picks, you're using 3 finger picks, one on your thumb, which is placed like this, and 2 on your index and middle finger. And they are placed like this. Notice that you need to fold the metal back across your finger a little bit. When they first come, they're straight out, and that's very awkward to try to play with. So fold them back so that they're fairly comfortable on your fingers and that they fit tightly. Now, holding your right hand on the banjo, this is probably the single most important thing that you have to learn to do, and it's probably the most difficult also. And that's to take your ring and your pinky fingers and hold them down on the head of the banjo. And that is so when you start playing faster, your hand is held steady and it won't float around like it will if you're not holding on to anything. So this is very important to keep these fingers down here. And it's very difficult to do because this finger is going to want to follow this finger when you pick. So when I learned to play, I had to tape these 2 fingers together in order to get them to stay down. You can do anything you need to do to do that, but it's very important. I don't think I've ever seen a bluegrass banjo player not put his fingers down on the banjo. And you always see worn lines in the head like this from where the fingers rub against it. You want to play the strings just 2 or 3 inches from the bridge. The closer you play to the bridge, the sharper and clearer the sound of the note. If you play farther away from the bridge, you get a little softer, and sometimes you'll play up here when you're playing backup or if you're not the lead instrument. But when you're playing lead, you want to play down here where you get a nice clear sound. Okay, on the left hand, first the placement of the thumb. Some people will hold their thumb in the middle of the back of the neck and fret like this. Some people will cradle the neck in between their thumb and play like this. It really doesn't matter which way you do, whichever is most comfortable for you. The important thing to remember when you're fretting is that your fingers come perpendicular to the fretboard. You don't want them laying over to the side like this because they'll hit strings next to it and you won't get a clean sound. The finger needs to come directly perpendicular to the fretboard, and that takes a little bit of practice, but when you do, then you get a good clean fretting of a chord. Okay, now let's tune your banjo to the following tones. Match the first string or the D string to this tone. Now, the second string or the B string. The third string or the G string. The fourth string is another D string. And the fifth string is a high G string. Now that we know how to hold the banjo and our banjos are in tune, let's learn about tablature. Tablature is a method of writing music for the banjo which tells you how to play the note on the banjo, not just what note to play as conventional written music does. Take a look at the tablature explanation on the screen. You'll notice 5 lines across the screen. These lines represent the strings of the banjo with the 5th string or the G string on the bottom and the 1st string or the D string on the top. The names of the strings are at the left of the line. D is the 1st string, B is the 2nd, G is the 3rd, D is also the 4th, and G is also the 5th. Some strings have the same notes, but they're an octave apart, the G's and the D's. Whenever there is a number above one of the lines, you play that string. Look at the first note. A 2 on the G strings means you play the G string at the 2nd fret. The next note is a 0 on the B string. Here you play the B string open without fretting it. Next, you play the 5th string open, and then the 1st string open, and then the 3rd string open. The X means that the previous note is held a little longer. It's like a rest note, and when you hear it played, you'll understand what it sounds like. When 2 notes are directly on top of each other, as the last notes in this measure, you play them at the same time. This is called a pinch. Now below the lines, you'll see a T, an I, or an M below each one of the notes. This tells you what finger of the right hand to use to strike the string. Either a T for the thumb, an I for the index finger, or an M for the middle finger. So the first measure would go like this. You play the G string at the 2nd fret with your thumb, then the B string open with your index finger, then the 5th string open with your thumb, then the 1st string open with your middle finger, then the middle string open with your thumb, and then you would pinch the 1st and 5th strings. So the measure played normally would sound like this. If you don't understand the tablature by the end of the first lesson, you should rewind the tape and listen to this section again. Now let's learn some music. In Lesson 1, we'll learn a basic banjo roll, the alternating thumb roll, and then use it in the song Bow Them Cabbage Down. At the bottom of your screen, you see the first measure from Lesson 1, and this measure contains 2 alternating thumb rolls. You'll play them open, which means you won't fret anything with your left hand. First, you hit the middle string, or the G string, with your thumb. Then the B string with your index finger, 5th string with your thumb, and 1st string with your middle finger. Okay, now let's go to the next measure so you can see the chord formations here. The first chord you see on your screen is a D7th chord, and you will use 2 fingers to fret that. You'll put your index finger on the 2nd string 1st fret, and then your middle finger on the 3rd string 2nd fret. And that's a D7th chord. Now for the G chord, just keep these fingers in the same position and move them up 2 frets, so that your middle finger is on the 4th fret middle string and your index finger is on the 3rd fret 2nd string. And this is a form of the G chord. Now for the C chord, and this is just a partial C, pick up your index finger, move your middle finger up a fret to the fifth fret. Then your ring finger will go on the fifth fret of the B string. And that will sound. So you have the D7th chord, the G chord, and the C formation. Now let's try Bow Them Cabbage Down one measure at a time. In the first measure, you have two alternating thumb rolls while you're in the G chord. So, as we saw before, put your middle finger on the fourth fret and index finger on the third fret and play the alternating roll twice. In the next measure, we go to a C chord. So you lift up your index finger, slide your middle finger up a fret, and put your ring finger down at the fifth fret on the second string, and play the alternating thumb roll twice. In the next measure, we go back down to the G chord. So you lift your ring finger up, slide your middle finger down, and put your index finger down at the third fret. Play the alternating thumb roll twice. In the next measure, we go to the D7th chord, so you just slide your fingers down 2 frets to the second and first fret, and play the alternating thumb roll twice. The next measure, you slide it back up to the fourth fret and play it in G twice. Then move it back up to the C formation, play it twice. Then to the G formation, and you just play it once here. Slide down to D7th, play it once. And then you play open twice. And that's our first song. So let's see how it sounds at full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you feel comfortable with Bow Them Cabbage Down, we'll learn a second banjo roll, the forward roll, and then use it in the song Red River Valley. The bottom of your screen is the first example of the forward roll. Again, we'll do no fretting with the left hand. You start with your thumb on the middle string, then middle finger on the first, thumb on the fifth, index on the middle, middle on the first, thumb on the fifth, index on the middle, and middle on the first string. Notice when you repeat the measure, the thumb starts on the middle. Thumb, thumb. Now the second example of the forward roll, instead of the middle string, we'll use the second string, but it's played the same way with the right hand. Now before we do Red River Valley, we'll have to learn the C chord. And with the C chord, you start with your index finger on the second string, first fret, then your ring finger on the first string, second fret, and then you bring your middle finger over to the 2nd fret bass string. And that's a full C chord, which we'll be using in this song. Now let's go over Red River Valley measure by measure. The first measure starts with some pickups, and these are notes that are just played slowly with the thumb. Then you do a forward roll, fretting the middle string at the 4th fret. Move down to the 2nd fret. So this whole section goes. In the next measure, we stay on the forward roll, and you start with the thumb, then 2nd fret middle string, and in the 3rd measure, we go to the C chord and do some alternating thumb rolls. And in the next measure, you're still in the C chord, and the first half of the measure is another alternating thumb roll. And then you go open. So this measure sounds. Okay, in the next measure, we go back to the forward roll up at the 4th fret. Again, and you go open. Okay, in the next measure, you go to the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, which you get with your ring finger. And then your index finger will get the 1st fret and open. Okay, the next measure to the D7th chord and do 2 alternating thumb rolls. Next measure is still alternating thumb roll in D7th, but you start on the bass string. And then up to the 3rd fret again with your ring finger, index finger, then the next measure, we're in G, 2nd fret. Once again, just remember to start with your thumb. Okay, and then the next measure. So you have 3 forward rolls there. Middle string open, middle string 2nd fret, and then 2nd string open. And the next measure, we'll go to a C chord, but for the first note or two, we'll still be in G. You get this 3rd fret with your ring finger again, then go to the C chord. Once again. And then you'll have to bring your middle finger down to the 2, pause, then pinch, and pause, then. In the next measure, we'll go to a D7th chord, which will start out all open. And 4th fret bass string. So that whole measure sounds. The next measure, we're at D7th. Then alternating thumb roll, and then open. Once more. And then we go back to G, and just a straight open forward roll. And then the last measure, you hit 1 long note and a pinch. So now let's hear how Red River Valley sounds at full speed. 1, 2, 3. In Lesson 3, we'll learn a third banjo roll, the forward reverse roll, and then use it in the song Cumberland Gap. You can look at the measure at the bottom of your screen, and this shows a forward reversed roll. Now, a forward roll is any time you play the thumb, and then the index, and then the middle string, the middle finger, in that succession. Now, it may vary on the string. You could start on the middle string, thumb, index, middle, or bass, or fifth. Anytime you play the thumb, and then the index, and then the middle, you've played a forward roll. A reverse roll is the middle, and then the index, and then the thumb. And this roll is a combination of the two. You start with the forward roll on the fifth string, thumb, index, middle, thumb, middle, index, thumb, middle. So it's a little more complex roll, but it's a more fuller sounding roll. So here's how Cumberland Gap sounds one measure at a time. In the first measure of Cumberland Gap, you have two alternating thumb rolls with no fretting involved. Once again. In the second measure, we start on the second string of the middle, second fret of the middle string, and do a forward roll up to the fifth string. Then switch over to the second fret first string, pinch. Once more. In the next measure, the forward reverse roll, and you still have your finger up here on the second fret. Then it comes open. Once again. And in the last measure, an alternating thumb roll, middle string, pinch. Once more. So here's Cumberland Gap played at full speed. If you feel comfortable with 3 songs we've learned so far, we'll learn 2 basic left-hand techniques, the slide and the hammer-on. These will be used in virtually every bluegrass song you play. First, the slide. We'll learn this on a standard alternating thumb roll. You put your middle finger of your left hand on the second fret of the middle string. And then you strike the string with your thumb, and while you still hold the string down, slide up to the third fret. And then play the rest of the roll with it. Now the second half of the measure shows the roll played without a slide. It's important to play the slide first and then not play the slide to make sure that your right hand does nothing different. The tendency for most beginning students is to put a little pause after the slide and then finish. You shouldn't do that. Your right hand should be going at the same speed whether you're sliding or not. Okay, in the next measure, we'll have the hammer on. In this case, you're going to hit the bass string, the fourth string, with your thumb, and then you're going to bring the middle finger of your left hand down onto the string at the second fret, so that you hear the note at the second fret. And this is not a passive move. You don't just set your finger down, or you'll deaden the string before you can fret it. You kind of slap your finger down. And then do this with the alternating thumb roll. Just as with the slide, your right hand should be doing exactly the same thing whether you're hammering on or not. Now let's try the slide and hammer on in Cripple Creek. The first measure, you have a number of quarter notes. You start at the 5th fret on the first string, your middle finger, then the 5th string open, which is the same note, and then 1st string open, 2nd string open. Once again. The next measure, we go to a C chord and a forward roll, then 1st string open and pinch. In the next measure, we start with the slide. That's a slide on a forward reverse roll. And then a hammer on, the middle string open, pinch. Then when you play the song, you'll repeat those 4 measures. Then we go into the second part. You start with a slide and an alternating thumb roll. In the next measure, you do that same roll once more. And bass open, pinch. Once again, you do the 3rd roll, bass, pinch. And then, just as before, you have the slide on the forward reverse roll. Once more. And in the last measure, hammer on an alternating thumb roll, middle string, pinch. And as it says in your tablature booklet, you'll repeat these 4 measures also when you play the song. So now let's listen to Cripple Creek at full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. In Lesson 5, we'll learn a basic form of an end-of-phrase lick that you'll use over and over. The first measure starts with your thumb on the middle string, then middle finger on the 1st string, then thumb on the 5th, then your index finger hits the middle string at the 2nd fret, then middle finger, first string open, then your index finger back on the middle string open, then the bass string at the second fret, and middle string open. One more time. And then you end this phrase with some quarter notes and pinches that you see in the next measure. So both measures would sound like this. To help wean you from watching the tablature on the screen, the rest of the song demonstrations will not have the tablature on the screen. However, you have the tablatures to all the songs in the booklet that I'm sure you've been using, so follow along in the book while I go over each measure in Bury Me Beneath the Willow. In the first measure, you start off with a slide and a forward roll. Once again. Make sure on that one that you hit that with the thumb. Second measure, you have some forward rolls. Once again. Okay, then we go to the C chord and some alternating thumb rolls. And a hammer on. That measure once again. Then the next measure, still in C and still using the alternating thumb rolls. A hammer on the bass string. So that measure again. Bass string, pinch, middle string, pinch, and just like the first measure, then the first fret is here, then open, then second fret, middle string, we do those two measures again in the D. Then the next measure is just like the first one. And the next measure is just like the second. Back into the C chord with the hammer-ons. Bass string, pinch, pinch. Now to a D chord, use your ring finger on the 4th fret, and when you come to the 2, use that with your index finger. Once again. And then the end of phrase lick. Those last two measures once more. Now let's hear Bury Me Beneath the Willow at full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Often in bluegrass, scale notes from a blues scale will be used. In this lesson, a simple blues phrase will be introduced. It's a two-measure phrase, but the first measure is the meat of the phrase. It starts with a forward roll, and you're going to fret the third string at the third fret, which is the blues note, with your middle finger, and then your index finger will come up to the second fret on the first string. And you'll start with a forward roll, then index finger, middle, thumb, middle. That alternating the index and thumb finger there is important. Index, thumb, index, thumb. So the whole measure. And then you end this with quarter note and pinch. So both phrases, or both measures, sound like this. Once again. Now let's see how this phrase can be used in Lonesome Road Blues. First, we'll go through it measure by measure. Lonesome Road Blues starts out with some pickup notes. And pickups are just notes that come in before the beginning of the first measure of the song. And here you're going to pinch between the fifth and the second string. There are three pickups. The first is an open pinch, then at the first fret, and then the second fret. And these are played quickly, like. In the first measure, we'll start with a quarter note up on the first string, then a hammer-on from the second to the third fret on the second string. And this is usually done with your index finger and ring finger. And this your natural inclination is to use your middle finger, but I think you'll find if you use your ring finger in the long run it'll be more comfortable. So hammer on in a forward roll. Keep that ring finger at the third fret. So the first measure again. Then you're going to put your ring finger up here at the second fret, first string, and do some more forward rolls. Once again. And then that end of phrase lick that we learned last lesson. And up to the third fret. Once again. Then to the C chord with a hammer on. Another hammer on. Then the end of phrase lick. Back up to the third fret. Back to the C chord. Hammer on. Then the blues phrase. And then a number of quarter notes. Again, that phrase, that second measure. And then into a D chord. Hammer on. Use your middle finger, second fret. Again, those two measures in D. And then the end of phrase lick with a little change, you're going to slide from the second to third fret. Here. Once again. So those last two lines are and then you would go straight back into the pickups if you're playing it again. Now let's hear Lonesome Road Blues at full speed. 1, 2, 1. Now we'll learn the third basic left-hand technique for adding to a melody, the pull-off. And we'll use all three left-hand techniques, slides, hammer-ons, and pull-offs, in the tune Worried Man Blues. You see in the measure here, we're going to use a forward reverse roll, and you're going to start with a slide. Here's where you come to the pull-off, and you do that by fretting both the third and the second fret on the third string. Fret the second fret with your index finger and the third fret with your ring finger. And you're going to hit the string and then pull off with your ring finger down to the second fret. So you're pulling off from the third fret to the second. You can also do that from a fretted string to an open string, like the second fret of the bass string to the open. And again, you don't just lift up on it, because that kind of deadens the string. You have to pull it off to the side, either direction, because you're kind of snapping the string. And a good practice for this on the bass string at the second fret is just do a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs without hitting the string. And that's how hard you should be hitting it when you play. You can do it on the middle string too. So in this measure, the pull-off will be from the third to the second fret, and then you hit the first string open. And as you see in your tablature book, the second measure is just this forward reverse roll with no slides or pull-offs. So you can make sure that your right hand is doing the same thing whether you're adding these left-hand techniques or not. Here's Worried Man Blues, one measure at a time. The first measure starts out in G, and it's almost all open except for one note. In the second measure, again. Third measure, we have the slide and pull off like we did in the exercise. And middle string open, pinch, third fret. So those last two measures together go. And we go to the C chord with a hammer-on. Once again. Then middle string open, and you're still in the C chord. Hammer-on, open, then bass string open with the turnaround. Then we start again as in the first measure. And just as the second measure. We slide and pull off. Pinch, fourth fret. Those last two measures again. D7th with a forward reverse roll. Another forward reverse. Then the slide and pull off. Middle string open, pinch. Now let's try Worried Man Blues at full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this lesson, we'll introduce the most difficult first position chord, the F chord. But with practice, it should come down as easily as any of the other chords we've used. This is how you finger the F chord. You start with the middle finger of your left hand on the 2nd fret, 3rd string, your index finger on the 1st fret, 2nd string, and then your pinky on the 3rd fret, 1st string. The reason you don't use your ring finger there is because the full chord actually brings your ring finger over to the bass string at the 3rd fret. But in this song we won't be using the bass string, so you don't need to fret it. And here's a roll you can practice it on. It's just simple forward reverse roll. And try it open and then practice putting the chord down. It's a good way to practice fretting it. Now let's try the F chord in the classic tune Little Maggie. In the first measure of Little Maggie, we'll start with a slide on the bass string from the 3rd fret to the 5th, and then add some forward rolls to it. More. And then a couple of hammer-ons on the 2nd fret. Notice it's important that the first one is done with the index finger. Second one is done with the thumb. It's very important. Then you come to the F chord and of 2 forward reverse rolls. Once more. Then back to G, and the slide from the 3rd to the 5th. Notice how that is different from the first measure. And here's the 5th measure. Then the same 2 hammer-ons, a pull-off, that's a very important phrase. You'll use that over and over again. You turn around. So the last 3 measures. A very common phrase in bluegrass. And then you repeat these 4 lines for the full version of Little Maggie. Now let's try Little Maggie at full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this lesson, we'll learn a basic arrangement for Little Maggie played up the neck. Here are the chords that you'll need to play this arrangement. The first is a G formation at the 7th, 8th, and 9th frets. You play that with your index finger, the 7th fret, middle string, middle finger, 8th fret, 2nd string, and pinky 9th fret, 1st string. And just as with the F chord, the full G chord would bring your ring finger over to the bass string. But here we'll just be using these 3. The second G formation is a bar at the 12th fret, so you just put your index finger across the first 3 strings at the 12th fret. The D up the neck will be the F chord formation moved all the way up to the 10th fret. So you'll have your index finger on the 10th fret, 2nd string, your middle finger on the 11th fret, 3rd string, and your pinky on the 12th fret, 1st string. And again, the full D chord would bring your ring finger over to the bass string. And the F chord will be a bar at the 10th fret. Just bar with your index finger just like we did up at the 12th for the G, 2 frets back as an F. So with these chords we can play Little Maggie up the neck. So let's try Little Maggie up the neck, 1 measure at a time. The first measure of Little Maggie starts with the G chord at the 7th, 8th, and 9th, but we're only going to use the 2nd and 1st strings, so that's all you have to fret. So you start index finger, middle, and then thumb, middle, and then forward roll. Again, alternating between the index finger and then the thumb is very important. Then you come up to the 12th fret, and again you're only going to use the first 2 strings, so put your index finger across the first 2 at the 12th, and you use the same roll except you leave off the last note. This quarter note at the end of the measure gives you time to shift back 2 frets to the 10th fret, and here you're going to use all 3 strings, so you come from 2 at the 12th to 3 at the 10th. And then you have 2 forward reverse rolls. Now, listen to how these 2 measures can sound different depending on how you accent the notes. Accent this note up here and you get a much better feel for the F chord, because the 5th string, a G, is not part of an F chord. So you play it, but you don't play it very loud. Then you come back to the G chord at the 8th and 9th fret, and it's the same as the first measure. Then to the D chord, first 2 strings. You don't need this 11th fret because you're not playing it. And then you have the same right hand roll as you did the measure before at G. So you G down here, D, then come back with your index finger on the 8th fret. This is a little bit different formation. You have your index finger on the 8th, your ring finger on the 9th of the 1st string, and your middle finger on the 9th of the 3rd string, which is an E minor chord, but you can work out of G on this. So for the second to last measure, you start with a quarter note, then a forward roll, and then back to the 8th fret, pinch. Those 2 measures again. Once more. And then you play those 4 lines again for the complete version of Little Maggie. So now let's try it at full speed, Little Maggie up the neck. 1, 2, 3, 4. In our last lesson, we'll touch on melodic style of playing banjo. Scruggs-style banjo playing is designed for simple melodies where you can fill the space around the melody notes with chords. But in many fiddle tunes, there are so many melody notes, there's just no space for chords. Melodic style allows you to play scales quickly and play fiddle tunes note for note. In the measure, you see how to play a G scale in melodic style. Now, if we weren't playing melodic style, you'd use the first 3 strings, and you'd have to play a lot of notes right next to each other on the same string. And those are difficult to play fast. In melodic style, you can get the same scale and never play the same string twice in a row. You can also come back down then. So in this way, you can get a straight scale and play a lot of fiddle tunes note for note that you couldn't otherwise play very well. So let's try a simple melodic version of Cripple Creek. In the first measure of Cripple Creek, we're going to start out in G. You have your index finger on the 9th fret, and your middle finger on the 10th fret. And you do a forward reverse roll. And open. Then bar at the 5th fret, then open. And back up to the 9th and 10th. Then back here to the 5th, and you're going to use your index finger on the 5th, and then your ring finger over here on the 7th. Once again. Then you repeat those 4 measures, and then we go into the second part down at the bottom of the neck with a forward reverse roll. Then alternating thumb, and then a melodic scale up here. Do that melodic scale one more time. You're using your index on the 5th and ring finger on the 7th. And then index on the 1st, middle finger on the 2nd. And then you repeat those 4 lines for the full version. So let's try Cripple Creek in a melodic style.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I hope you've enjoyed learning these tunes. Mel Bay has a number of fine banjo books to help you further your study of bluegrass banjo, and here are a few that I can recommend. 3 Finger Pickin' Banjo Songbook by Mike Bailey, Banjo Workshop, also by Mike Bailey, Splitting the Licks by Janet Davis, and Backup Banjo by Janet Davis. These tunes have been just an introduction to the world of banjo playing, and I hope it leads to many years of enjoyment playing the banjo. If you've made it to here, you've made an excellent start, so don't stop now.